This video is brought to you by friend of the channel, SteelSeries, makers of the best keyboards, mice, and headsets on the market. They just released an all-new, all-white model of their industry-leading, award-winning premium headset, the Arctis Nova Pro Wireless. Get 12% off this or anything else on the SteelSeries website when you use offer code SKILLUP at checkout. Click below to grab one now, or stick around to the end of the video to learn more. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to say some bad stuff, and then I'm going to spend the rest of this video absolutely gushing about this. The developers of Space Marine 2, Saber Interactive, were meant to host a public beta for the game's multiplayer modes. That should have been happening right about now. However, at the 11th hour, they cancelled that multiplayer beta, saying they needed the extra time to focus on shipping the game in its best possible state. But betas are one of the things that you do to make sure you ship a game in its best possible state. So that was a little bit concerning. Now, I already played Space Marine 2, so I already knew this game was good, but to be perfectly honest with you, I actually underestimated just how good it is, but more on that later. The main question I had going into this latest preview build was, does this multiplayer stuff work? And right now, I'm extremely disappointed to tell you that it does not work, at least for me. After over more than an hour of attempting to play co-op with someone else, the game would just not load the level. We'd be stuck in the hangar bay indefinitely, getting our Space Marine steps up, but killing very few Tyranids. The other guy I was playing with said he did manage to get a co-op session up and running at one point, but only once. This game is out in just over a month, and they gave us a multiplayer preview build where the multiplayer doesn't work, after they just cancelled the multiplayer beta. I will also say that this build only gives us access to the co-op PvE missions. We did not have access to any of the 6v6 PvP multiplayer. When that goes live in a month, it will do so without any public testing and without any testing from media or content creators. So all of that is obviously concerning, but I would say that I've seen similar things to this in the past for other games, where multiplayer seems really balked prior to launch, and then it's actually fine come launch. But I've also seen it go the other way a lot, that way where multiplayer modes are basically unplayable for weeks or longer. So TLDR, don't panic, but don't pre-order. That is a general rule of thumb for everything all the time, but especially here, given that the preview build meant to showcase the multiplayer was not able to showcase the multiplayer. So with that out the way, I'm going to spend the rest of this video talking about everything other than online functionality, and I'm not going to refer back to that as some sort of caveat for all the things that I'm excited about, because I made my point with all that stuff already, and there's more to this game than just its online infrastructure. Is that alright? Alright, let's do it. Space Marine 2. As I said, I had already played this video game, and I thought it was awesome, and I loved it. And even then, I still had no idea just how good this was. This is so unbelievably good that I am stunned. I think the easiest way to put it is this. Imagine Warhammer 40k Darktide was not only a really good game in terms of its gameplay and visuals and commitment to the source material, etc., but it also had all of the other shit it was meant to have at launch, like good performance on PC, and actual functional progression systems, and weapon unlocks, and meaningful class design, and more customization than you can shake a chainsaw at. Honestly, as someone who loved the core elements of Darktide but was frustrated by its myriad shortcomings, Space Marine 2 feels like this fucking impossible fever dream. It's like Warhammer games are not allowed to be this good. It's basically illegal. But if all this holds at release, then I am certain that this is going to be an all-timer in the extremely patchy pantheon of Warhammer 40k games, but also just a straight up fantastic third-person action game that's going to see a lot of new people enter the 40k fandom. The God Emperor Henry Cavill's nerd army will swell bigger than his pecs on chest day, and existing Warhammer fans are going to be very proud to see the universe they're so invested in brought to life with such love and care and scale and ambition. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is just look at this video game. Just look at it. Like, even if you don't give a shit about Warhammer 40k, you gotta admit that this looks fucking cool. The attention to detail on display here is staggering, with this monumental architecture meeting militaristic brutalism, with later parts of the level being buried under collapsed rubble or engulfed by chaos energy. The fine detail adorning just the Ultramarine alone is so impressive, but that same care is present in everything. There is a love of the source material that oozes out of this, with every plotting step you take sinking you deeper and deeper into this universe.
You have disgraced yourselves by abandoning your brothers. Your punishment is dishonorable death.
God failed you. I
Ready?
beg you.
that you forgive my cowardice.
I've now played 4 Space Marine 2 levels. The first was the preview I played last year. That was like a trench warfare style setting, a lot of fighting out in no man's land. This level here is a city under Tyranid siege, but much of the city remains intact, allowing you to appreciate the towering megalomania that 40k is known for. There's another city-based level I got to play, but that had a lot of industrial and infrastructure space as well, sending me into the bowels of the city. The last one was a dense jungle biome that eventually led into a gigantic factory, culminating in a battle on the factory's footsteps that saw me holding off an entire Tyranid swarm. That feeling, by the way, of the swarm is one of the central pillars of this game, and it never stops feeling incredible. That moment when you reach a vista, peer out towards the horizon, and see a torrent of Tyranids racing towards you. This is not just an artistic skybox effect, by the way. The enemies that are coming towards you in these moments are real enemies that you can shoot. We first saw this tech with Saber's previous game, World War Z, where throngs of zombies would be on screen at any one point, and somehow the engine could still keep up with it all. Applying that same technology here has had remarkable results. The entire conceit of this campaign against the Tyranids is that they are this innumerable swarm, utterly endless and unstoppable if it weren't for the Ultramarines, demigods purpose-bred to secure the impossible victories that mortal men could never deliver, but that the Emperor demands. When I played that early preview last year, I played it on my own PC, an RTX 4090, and it ran like total dog shit, just abysmal. But back then, I specifically said that I did not care about performance at that point because it was too early to worry about that stuff. Optimization would come later. I am extremely pleased to tell you that optimization has arrived, and on my high-end machine, Space Marine 2 ran absolutely flawlessly, maintaining a frame rate well above 60 while running at 4K max settings. I wasn't able to test it on lower-end PCs or consoles, so I won't comment on that, but I will say that on PC, the game does ship day one with DLSS and FSR2. The rest of the settings menu is what you'd expect, though sadly, no FOV adjuster. Not entirely uncommon for third-person games, but still would have been nice to see that. The game does support keyboard and mouse and controller, obviously. I tried both and they were both perfect, no complaints there. Other than the multiplayer issues I mentioned at the top, I didn't have any technical issues while playing this, so fingers crossed the final release product maintains this level of performance and polish. Okay, so far we know that this game looks incredible and runs really well. Tick. One thing I was not prepared for was just how well written this game would be. So the campaign mission you're seeing here doesn't contain any of the cutscenes or in-game dialogue exchanges that were present throughout this mission, and it's a lot. No spoilers here, so don't worry, but the mission begins with Titus and his squad mates having a very tense conversation on board their landing craft, as Titus's patchy history makes his fellow Ultramarines quite uncomfortable. Throughout the mission, there are various little exchanges that ratchet up the tension, and these story threads are all brought to a head in that same mission during a boss battle at the end. Boss battle, by the way, so fucking cool. I really wish I could show it to you, but I'm not allowed. But the writing is what really grabbed me. It's thrifty and taut, utilizing the same economy of words that an Ultramarine would employ. It pulls you into the world of 40k by seeding ideas and terminologies without burying you under them. I have a passing level of interest in 40k. I am by no means an expert, but I found myself fully locked in whenever these characters were talking about their previous missions, their battle tactics, their weaponry, their whatever. It's a sort of dialogue that will both reward existing fans and make new fans. But it's also just good franchise agnostic storytelling about a group of buff military dudes who are there to do a job and they don't trust each other and they got to figure all that shit out while also fighting a gajillion space bugs with their bare hands. It really works. In a single mission alone, this delivered more storytelling than the entirety of Warhammer 40k Darktide. And I'm sorry I keep dunking on Darktide, but the truth is I love that game so much for what it is, but I'm also just super bummed out when I imagine what it could have been. Fat Shark specifically promised this extremely compelling Dan Abnett written story for that game. To say that we got nothing would almost be unfair to the term nothing. Space Marine 2, on the other hand, is putting its story front and center, and so far, every story beat, every cutscene, every bit of in-game chatter is just hitting so right, and I am desperate to experience this full campaign storyline for myself. Having played that early preview slice last year, one thing that I noticed playing this week is just how far things have come in terms of core gameplay. It felt great even back then, don't get me wrong, but this larger slice showcased all the little intricacies that have found their way into the combat sandbox, from all new execution animations to new weapon types to new enemies to a dynamic ping system and heaps more stuff. The main thing you need to know though is that combat here feels glorious. It's a balance between ranged and melee combat depending on which class you pick, more on that later. But in the campaign missions while playing as Titus, you're making use of the full sandbox, able to equip a vast arsenal of weapons from bolters to sniper rifles to heavy bolters to plasma guns and tons more. Each one of them feels great to use with their own handling profiles, ammo economies and use cases. Throughout the missions you're actually offered a few different loadout pods which allow you to change your weapon loadout on the fly. On the lower difficulties that probably won't matter much, but on higher difficulties you're definitely going to want to switch to a weapon type suited to the moment. Incidentally, there are 4 difficulties available at launch, and that's for the main campaign as well as for the PvE co-op missions. Combat is not just about shooting blindly into the chitinous mass, mind you. It's very much about prioritizing the bigger targets which can deal big damage, knock you over, pin you down, or even call in for reinforcements. These one-on-one encounters with these bigger enemies often involve quite a bit of parrying, which is very easy to pull off given the on-screen indicators make it hard to miss the timing, and the timing is actually very generous. Getting it right sets you up for a point-blank shot that not only does big damage, but it looks pretty damn cool as well. The melee is extremely good. It's a bit of a go-to when you're squaring off against the smaller enemies since you want to save a lot of your ammo for the bigger threats, and it never stops being satisfying to carve a path forward with big meaty swings of your chainsword, your power sword, or just your warhammer. Activatable abilities are an important part of the combat flow here as well. In this campaign mission, Titus had a sort of rallying cry that will buff damage output for a time, but later on that's replaced by a jetpack that will not only let you fly above the battlefield for clear sightlines, but will also let you do sick dive bombs that make bugs go splat. Oh yeah, and did I mention that there are Chaos Marines in this game? Here's what it's like to fight one and execute one. Now, just to be clear about my expectations of this game, I went into this build expecting Space Marine 2 to be a linear campaign-focused game with, 10 to 12 missions I could replay on different difficulties. I knew there'd be some PvP because that had been earlier announced, and that's all I really expected. But then, I finished the campaign mission, and I got loaded into this battle barge hangar area. It's basically a hub menu, but a really pretty one. I really liked walking around it. It's there that I discovered that in addition to the campaign and the 6v6 PvP multiplayer, there's also co-op PvE missions called Operations, and these things position Space Marine 2 as a sort of co-op shooter like Left 4 Dead or Back 4 Blood or Darktide or whatever, games with linear scripted missions that are intended to be replayed, supported by character classes with detailed progression and customization available for each class and each weapon that that class can use. So let me explain. So yeah, there is a campaign and it's centered on the main character, Titus. Honestly, don't know how the game plans to approach the question of his class or abilities or whatever. There was no evidence of any of that stuff in the 2 campaign missions I played, so I don't know if the campaign has a progression tree or whatever. Separate from the campaign are 6 3-player co-op PvE missions called Operations. You can play them solo with bots, or you can invite 2 mates. You go up to a terminal in the battle barge and select one of these missions and off you go. You will play through those missions using one of 6 classes. There's the tactical class focused on a balanced weapon loadout, and it's able to scan enemies to deal bonus damage and reveal hidden targets. There's the assault, which is able to use the jetpack we saw in that campaign mission before. There's the vanguard, who uses a grapple to literally grapple towards enemies and dive kick them. There's my personal favorite, the bulwark, who is this big shield bro and he can plant a banner to restore armor to your battle brothers. There's a sniper who can turn invisible, and there's a heavy who specializes in heavy ordnance and can drop a titan bubble a la Destiny 2. Customization on offer here is out of this world. Each class has 6 different armor sets that look totally sick and are unlockable by just playing the game. In addition to that, there are selectable Astartes chapters that to you and me are just like recolorings of armor, but to Warhammer nerds, these are color palettes and iconography pulled from the vast volumes of Warhammer 40k lore. And even beyond that, there's a custom armor set maker that allows you to individually recolor every section of your armor. So you can have a green right arm and a blue left arm and a red chest and a black set of legs and purple trim on everything and different logos on every part of your armor, you name it. You can decorate these dolls with nearly the same freedom that you could if you were painting them, and most of it is freely unlockable just by playing the game. I did, however, notice a few of the recoloring options were locked behind DLC, which I'm assuming is like a pre-order bonus or a deluxe edition or whatever. About 20% of the recoloring options I saw were DLC specific, and I'm not sure what sort of long-term plans Saber Interactive has in regards to monetization of cosmetics, so we'll have to wait and see. Bottom line though, customization here is deep, and that's just the visual customization. Each class has its own perk tree that has perks for yourself and for your team and for your gear and for your signature ability. There are a total of 24 upgrade perks divided in different columns, and you can have one perk active in each column. So with the Bulwark, for example, I may want one perk that decreases damage taken by 25% when my armor is depleted, or I may want to do 25% more melee damage after I do a shield bash. The options here are simple but meaningful, allowing you to carve out a distinct identity and playstyle specific to that class. And that's before we get to the weapons. Every weapon in this game has 4 rarity tiers that aren't just the same weapon but like a different color or whatever. They're the same weapon but with better stats and with designs that look incredible. In addition to that, each weapon has its own perk tree with 16 different selectable perks affecting things like handling, reload speed, damage output, and so much more. So 6 classes, each of them with 6 armor sets to earn, nearly unlimited visual customization, a class perk tree with 24 nodes allowing you to finesse a unique playstyle for each class, more than a dozen weapon types, each of them with 4 rarity levels that change their stats and their appearance, and each weapon has its own unique perk tree with 16 nodes. I had no idea that any of this was coming, no idea at all, and now I see that Space Marine 2 is not just a one and done campaign experience, and not just a 6v6 PvP experience, it's also a co-op shooter that wants me to play it for at least a few dozen hours as I unlock everything as I move through the 4 difficulty tiers on offer, the difficulty of each tier being tuned to recommended player level, maxing out at level 15. I don't know how those difficulty modifiers will change up each level, maybe they're all the same just with different HP for all the enemies or whatever, I don't know, that's not something I can answer right now, but I am very interested to find out how all of that works come launch. It is very rare that preview builds surprise you to this degree, especially this close to launch. Most of the time, you know what you're getting into, and it's less about what is this, and it's more about is this good? I had no idea I would be spending so much time during this preview discovering new things. Things that honestly really reshape my fundamental understanding of what this game is at launch, and what it could be in the future. See, I have long believed, and I've said this many times in the past, that the way live services launch is generally shit. Companies promise a live service before they've even established a demand for that service. If the game you release is garbage, then it doesn't matter that you're promising 3 years worth of seasonal content. It's classic cart before the horse sort of stuff. The way to do it is like Deep Rock Galactic, which didn't promise to be a live service at launch, but it organically became something like that because people just wanted more stuff, and so the developers were happy to make it. Multiplayer network infrastructure aside, as I look at the underlying quality of this Space Marine 2 experience, and I look at the framework they've built for a class-based co-op shooter, I'm super excited to imagine that Saber might have long-term ambitions for this one. They have not announced any such plans. To be clear, Space Marine 2 is not a live service. It is a boxed product that you pay for. There is no promise of future content, at least not so far as I know. There is no battle pass. This is just a straight up video game, but it has the scaffolding in place that if you wanted to organically grow this to become a live service, it could do that. And maybe Space Marine 2 becomes this living, ever-evolving experience that continues to deliver new adventures in the grimdark 40k universe. Obviously, we're getting ahead of ourselves, but I just love this so much that I find myself excited to imagine that this game has a big future ahead of it. You know what I mean? Obviously, we have to keep our hype in check, in no small part due to those multiplayer issues, but just in general. But I've now played over 10 hours of Space Marine 2 across 2 different preview builds, and I've loved every single second of it both times. I'm really hoping that Saber Interactive can land this one, because if they can, then I think this is going to be huge. Space Marine 2 is out on September 9th. I cannot wait. It is no secret that this video sponsor SteelSeries puts out the best gaming headset on the market, the Arctis Nova Pro Wireless. That's not just me talking, by the way. Go and look at reviews, go and look at the dozens and dozens of awards that this thing is racked up, and you will see just how good this thing is. I've been using it since before it was released, actually. SteelSeries sent me an early unit, and it's been incredible. Could never imagine replacing it unless SteelSeries were to release an all-new, all-white edition that contrasts beautifully with my all-black setup for a nice domino style effect, while neatly matching my white controllers when playing on Xbox or PS5. That's right, the crazy scientists at SteelSeries Labs have done it. They took the best headset on the market and gave it a brilliant all-white finish that looks lovely whether you're using it at home or on the go. Because believe me, this thing is versatile. The white Arctis Nova Pro Series headsets come in PlayStation or Xbox variants, but they also support multi-system connect, allowing you to connect to a PC or multiple consoles at the same time, so you can just switch between them really easily. That's done through this sexy looking dedicated audio controller, which not only handles that, but also lets you control volume, chat mix levels, switch audio modes, tweak EQ, and much more. This thing comes with 2 batteries in the box, one of them charging in that DAC while you use the other one, giving you unlimited battery, especially given that each of these batteries supports up to 22 hours of playback. It's also one of the only gaming headsets on the market to feature active noise cancelling, something that almost no other gaming headset on the market does, and I absolutely love that. Putting them on and hearing that sound of silence is just so good every time. There are other bells and whistles on the SteelSeries Arctis Nova Pro Wireless headset, so if you want to get the full rundown, you can find out more info on their website. The white edition is brand spanking new, and it will sell out because that's what always happens whenever SteelSeries release a new headset. So if you want to grab it, be sure to get in quick. Best of all, you get 12% off when you use offer code SKILLUP at checkout over at steelseries.com. That's 12% off, no strings attached when you visit steelseries.com and use offer code SKILLUP. Thanks SteelSeries for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.